Hello, I'm Matt Grobar, and welcome back to Comedy Means Business. It's December 15th, and today we're back at All Things Comedy, joined by someone whose career has come full circle, Kumail Nanjiani. On Friday, Kumail debuts Night Thoughts, the second comedy special of his career and his first in over a decade, which was just nominated for a Golden Globe. Best known to some for his film and television work, Kumail put stand-up on the back burner for around a decade after that side of his career took off. First as one of the stars of Silicon Valley, an acclaimed HBO comedy, and then with The Big Sick, the Academy Award-nominated film where he was co-writer, executive producer, and star. Examining his and wife Emily V. Gordon's unconventional love story, the drama showed that there was much more to Kumail than his acting chops, cementing his stardom and leading to new levels of opportunity on both sides of the camera. From there, he went on to multiple Emmy nominations, along with his very own role in the MCU. But while Kumail is busier than ever in film and television after the launch of his new production company Winter Coat, he's a stand-up at heart, and on his first full-on tour in support of his new act, he found that he had much more to say. Kumail joined me to discuss the meticulous process of building his new hour for Hulu and what it felt like to re-enter the stand-up world after some time away. He also gets into his role in the second season of Fallout, out on Prime Video later this week, his near-term plans to get behind the camera for his directorial debut, and how he sees stand-up slotting into his schedule in the years ahead. Kumail Nanjiani, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, Night Thoughts is your first special in like 12 years, and this represented the first time you were really seriously doing stand-up, like consistently, in how many years?
I would say when I did The Big Sick in 2016 is when we shot that. Since then, I hadn't really been doing stand-up very much, but I would say even a couple of years before that was pretty barely. Like really the only time I ever did stand-up between 2016, there were two. One, when we did like a little tour to promote The Big Sick with me and Judd Apatow and Kurt Braunohler and Ray Romano doing stand-up. So I did sets then in like, that would have been like 2017, I guess. And then when I did SNL later that year for the monologue, I did a little bit of stand-up. So really zeros from 2017 to 2023, but really from like 2015 on, not very much at all.
And so why now? Why did you decide, like, I really want to get back out and do this again? You know,
when the SAG strike happened, we didn't really think there was going to be a strike until like pretty close to when the strike started. So this movie was in pre-production, and then I knew all my lines, and then suddenly, you know, the parachute got pulled out, and I was like, I had all this like creative energy, and I didn't know what to do with it.
So was that a project that was made? Sorry.
It never got made. I got killed by I hope it at some point comes back because I think it's so good, but it was one of those. We had a start date. We were in pre-production. Crew was hired, and it was one of the, you know, so many projects ended up dying around then, and this was one of them, so we never got to make it. Hopefully we will someday. So many times you see a movie, you know, you're like, that's amazing. They're like, it took us 10 years to get it made. I keep trying to like remember that. Yeah. At that point, I just was like, okay, so stand-up was this like sort of unopened door in my head for a few years where I was like, I wonder if I still like it. I wonder if I could still be good at it. So that when suddenly I had nothing to do, I was like, okay, I'm going to try and see if I actually still like stand-up. And I was like, I'll try and recreate the conditions of when I was really doing it. So I set up like 7 shows for myself over 2 weeks. And I said I would do all 7 shows and then decide after that how I felt about it. And then by the time I did the 7th one, it felt like good enough. And I was having enough fun that I was like, okay, I want to keep doing it and see where this is going now. So that's kind of how it started.
How much material was that?
The first few times I did it?
Yeah.
I was probably doing 10-15 minute sets. All that stuff was pretty smoke and mirrors, you know, like because people hadn't seen me do stand up in a while. I wasn't listed on these shows, so people were like excited to see me. So I got a lot of like leeway. So I don't think any of the stuff I did in the first 2 months is actually in the special. It was just me because I'd forgotten how to write stand-up. Writing stand-up is a very specific thing, and in writing like screenplays for the last few years, they're actually very different skills. It took me a while. The performance came back earlier. Remembering how to write stand-up took a little bit longer. So I think the first couple months of shows that I did was all like kind of sleight of hand. It wasn't really material or good.
Let's talk more about the joke writing process. I'm told you're like very deliberate and meticulous and kind of really take your time with the whole thing. So what does it look like for you to get there?
I write every single thing out, and I'm meticulous in the sense that when I'm writing it, I want to know exactly where I'm starting, where I'm ending. When I'm on stage, hopefully I'm loose enough that there is a sense of discovery. I'm not trying to like recite it. I'm trying to bring it to life. So I'm not too beholden to the specific wording, but I do at first memorize a specific wording, kind of like learning lines. I do this thing where in my Google Doc, it's pretty scientific in that I bold all the punchlines. So then I can look at just a page and know if there's enough like bolding on a page. Otherwise, I can look at it visually and see like, oh, I need some sort of funny joke here. What could that be? I record myself. When I'm generating material, I record myself. I find it very hard to listen to myself, so I actually don't end up listening very often. But it's good to have, because there are certain things where I'm like, for some reason, that line really worked this time. So I want to try and listen and see why that line worked better than it does, but also try and be like, I thought that was a good laugh. Let me hear it again. You hear it again, you realize actually it wasn't that good, so I need to punch this up. So the first draft of a joke for me is not usually that different from the final draft. There's just a lot of iterating that's gone on, a lot of editing. I generally come up with a 1-minute premise, extend it to 7 minutes, and then it ends up at the end like a 3-minute joke. So all my jokes start off way too long. And then it's just a matter of like killing a bunch of babies,
Was it in your head really early on that you would go and do a special in Chicago where you started out?
There was a certain point when I started doing stand-up again at the end of 2023, I think maybe 3 months into it or something probably, where I was like, okay, I've put enough time into this and I feel like I'm in a groove enough that I owe it to myself to now see this through and do an hour. So I made that decision fairly early on. I mean, for me, it's a long time, but really not a very long time to have an hour. Like I was like, I gave myself a pretty small window to write a full hour. And when I decided I would do a special, I knew from the beginning I wanted to do in Chicago. Like whenever I thought about doing stand-up in the last 10 years, I was like, if I ever do a special, it's going to be in Chicago. Like that was kind of a non-negotiable. So once I decided, I got to see this through and do a special, because my first special, I'm very proud of it, Beta Male. But, that's like the best of 10 years of stand-up. So it's more a collection of jokes that I think were funniest.
As a lot of people's first specials are, right?
Yeah. And I think that's the challenge of like a second special, because then you're like, oh, all my best stuff is gone. Now I'm starting from scratch. With this, there was an element of that, but I had the advantage that I hadn't done it for so long that I could be a little more thoughtful about what I wanted it to be.
Yeah. So can you talk, I wanted to ask like about the scene you came out of. Like, I'm very curious, first of all, with Chicago. Can you sort of paint a picture of that world then, the people you were around, and like what that was like to navigate for you? Like it was right after college, right?
Right after college, moved to Chicago to try and do stand-up. I just opened the Chicago Reader, which was, I don't know if it's still around, but it was like the local weekly, what's going on in Chicago, and looked at all the open mics and just kind of went to all the open mics and signed up and did it. And that scene, I guess it was called the Chicago alt scene. It was really the only stand-up scene we had. Like we had one comedy club, which would have like national headliners come in, but there was not much overlap. So I started doing these shows. They're mostly in the back of bars, or, you're at the place called the Cubby Bear, which is right next to Wrigley Field where the Cubs play. And suddenly they turn off the game and now you're going to do stand-up. So it was really, we didn't perform hardly in any like established theater spaces or venues. It was all the back of bars and restaurants and that kind of stuff. Like the biggest show at the time was a show called the Lincoln Lodge, which was in the back of a breakfast restaurant called the Lincoln Restaurant. And it's gone now, but actually Conan like did a little thing there. on his show, on his NBC show. So it was all kind of like hodgepodge like that, but the scene itself was really good. Like, we didn't always get good audiences. Like, we were definitely like improv and sketch were definitely like still what Chicago's really known for.
Yeah.
Stand-up, we were definitely the orphans of the comedy scene, and there wasn't much overlap in those two scenes, except for a couple guys, TJ Miller and Nick Vatterott. Both did improv, sketch, and stand-up, so that was like our only link to that world. But those guys would always have packed audiences with cool young people, and we were always like performing to nobody, except for this Lincoln restaurant show, the Lincoln Lodge. They always had a good audience. By a good audience, I mean that whole room fit probably 65 people, maybe. But what was really good was the other comedians were all really good. So early days, when I started with Pete Holmes, and Nate Bargatze was there, and Hannibal Buress, and TJ, and Kyle Kinane, and Matt Bronger, and all these, like, Bette Stelling came later, Cameron Esposito came later, just like a couple of years later. So it was just like a really vibrant scene of really, really funny people. We just were kind of performing for each other mostly, which in a way was good, because it became that the most important thing is being original and being like impressive to other comedians, and not actually getting laughs is way less important than being true to yourself, being original, being unique, finding a new way to look at the world. The Chicago comedy scene really like instilled in me this idea of like, you have to write jokes that nobody else can write. It's not about how big the laugh is. It's about it's about the specificity of the joke.
Was it hard to did it take time to figure out really what that meant for you, and
years,
what your point of view is?
Years and years. I think Margaret Cho said that as a stand-up, there's like you level up 5 years in, then 10 years in, there's like a bump that happens. And for me, it was almost exactly 6 years in where I felt like, oh, I'm like getting constrained by the way I'm doing stand-up. I'm getting frustrated by it, in that there are certain things I can't really talk about. I don't mean anything important or social or anything. Sure. I just mean like my stand-up persona didn't allow for me to just like tell a story. I kind of could only do like set up punchline kind of stuff. And so it was 6 years in when I moved to New York. It sort of coincided with right when I was starting to get frustrated with the way I was on stage. So I would say for me, right around 6 years in is when I would say I figured out my voice, or at least what I wanted my voice to be, figured out how I wanted to be on stage. Because in the beginning, you're just getting on stage is the victory.
Yeah.
Once you get more comfortable and you learn how to write, then you're like, okay, now what do I want this to be? I know how to do it at its most basic level. What is the stuff on top of it that makes it so that only I can do this? So I would say about 6 years in when I was like, oh, I kind of know who I want to be on stage and what kind of stuff I want to do. And once that happened, I had this period of 2 years when I first moved to New York that I would say to this day are like my most like creatively fertile years. I was just writing all the time. I was really excited to go up. I wrote like some of the best jokes I ever had in those like 2 years of doing stand-up in New York. And it was like really fast. I was just like writing all the time and performing a lot. And so it was hard to find that persona thing. But some comics will talk about sort of imitating the voice of comics to kind of experiment with it early on and figure out who they are in that space. Is that something that applied to you? Like, who were you looking at? I don't think you're doing it on purpose. I think you only realize in hindsight who it was. For me, it was a comedian named Jake Johansson, who is really, really funny. He still tours all over the place. He has a special on HBO from like 94 called This'll Take About an Hour, which is a great title for an hour-long special. And I was really obsessed with this guy. To me, early on, the people that I really loved to stand up were him, Zach Galifianakis, and Jerry Seinfeld. So my style was sort of an amalgamation of them. And now when I look back, and also Hugh Grant's wedding speech in Four Weddings and a Funeral, my delivery on stage, when I look back on it now, was very heavily influenced by, I think it's a generous way to put it, by Jake Johansson and Hugh Grant. So, yeah,
that's very interesting.
Certainly, I mean, it's interesting. When I first saw Pete Holmes, he sounded like Brian Regan, like everybody, and Seinfeld. Like we all sounded like you could go to an open mic and tell who's everybody's favorite comics.
How did the Hugh Grant thing happen? That's kind of
I was just obsessed with Four Weddings and a Funeral and Hugh Grant, and I still am, and huge fan of his work. And I just think he's phenomenal. And those few years where, now he's like cool again and doing like stuff, and people are like, oh, Hugh Grant's actually a good actor. And I'm like, I've known this forever. I had the same with Matthew McConaughey. When they were both doing rom-coms, I was like, these people are really good. And now they're both like, really well-respected actors. But there was a period where they were just doing rom-coms. And I was watching all of them going, these guys are really good.
You mentioned in Chicago about sort of like the scene, the aspect of like performing in the back of bars and restaurants and things. It seemed like you brought that to LA, right? The Meltdown was sort of that vibe from what I gather.
Yeah, so it was in the back of a comic book store called Meltdown Comics. We did a show called The Meltdown with Jonah and Kumail, which is my friend Jonah Ray and me used to do it, and Emily, my wife, produced it. We just liked the idea. LA definitely had this thing even more than Chicago did, or even more than New York did. It was always like, there's an open mic in a laundromat. You'd always hear these things. Mm-hmm. So LA was definitely a place that was open to, because everybody, who wants to make it comes to LA. Some go to New York, but really LA is where people end up. And so the non-traditional venue spaces was a real thing in LA. But I remember I saw a show in the back of Meltdown when we were visiting. I think that might be when I first met Jonah, but we were just at this comic book store. Emily and I were visiting. And someone was like, come back here. And we went back. And there was like a comedy show going on. And it was incredible. What was great about that was, first of all, it was a decent size for a comedy room. It was like 125 people, which is really good.
Yeah.
It also just happened to be a really great comedy space. Like in comedy, the dimensions of the room and the thickness of the walls and how high the ceilings are and all that is so important, right? It's so important. It's really essential. And just by sheer luck, this back room of this comic book store had the perfect comedy performance space. So yeah, we did that show for 6 years, and it was great. We had like all the biggest people would come and drop in and do it. Like Chappelle dropped in, Robin Williams did it twice. Like,
really?
Yeah.
That's nuts.
We were kind of like the center of the LA alt comedy scene.
Yeah.
So, like obviously Patton Oswalt and Zach Galifianakis and Jim Gaffigan, like all the Sarah Silverman, all the huge comedians. We had everybody would show up and go up. It was really, really, really fun. And the fact that you had to walk through a comic book store to get to the space put people in a certain mindset. Like they were ready for it to be a little different, it didn't feel formal at all. You go to a comedy club, and I love performing at comedy clubs, but there's a 2-drink minimum, you're standing in line, you get your ticket, all that. It's like a very different vibe. So it felt very, very exciting. We still run into people who are like, we had our first date at your show and this is our kid now.
How is it? Is there any anecdote with Robin Williams? I'm so curious.
Yeah, so it was my birthday, and Jonah and I would host, and we would do the top, both of us together, and then one person would go up and introduce the next comic, and we'd sort of go back and forth like that. So I was on stage, I introduced someone. There was a little green room to the right. So we had 2 green rooms. Part of the reason the show took off is because we had a green room right before you go to perform. And then there was another green room in the back where comics could hang out and be loud and the audience wouldn't hear it. So it became kind of a hangout vibe too. Like people would come hang out there. Like Hassan Minhaj would come and hang out there. Like comics would just knew like Wednesday nights we can go hang out at the Meltdown, watch some comedy, but really hang out with friends. So that's what was cool about it. Another like very happy accident, right? So I go to the green room to the left, which is like where the soundboard is, and people are like just waiting to come up. And I go in, and Robin Williams is standing there. And he's like, hey, I'm Robin. I'm like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, do you want to go up? He's like, oh, no. And I was like, are you sure? And before I can finish, sure, his coat and his hat were off. And he was like, maybe just 2 minutes. Then he got on stage and he did like 20 minutes. And it was incredible. He killed. It's so fun to go on stage and be like, please welcome to the stage, Robin Williams, in the back of this comic book store. And people think it's going to be like someone from UCB doing an impression.
Yeah.
So they start clapping. And then the realization like, oh no, that is the Robin Williams.
That's wild.
Killed 20 minutes. He came back and he was like, he got done. He was like, thank you. I really needed that. Then he came back a couple of weeks later and he did it again. And and then he was gone. Like this was, towards the end. So
he was just there to hang out?
He was there because his daughter, Zelda, who's like a great filmmaker, used to come and just watch. And I think she told her dad to like, hey, come watch this show. It's going to be, you'll like it. So very grateful to Zelda for sending him. So I think I don't know if she was there that night, but she told him to come.
Phenomenal.
I mean, that's the weird thing. Like, I just hung out with Daniel Trachtenberg, who did Predators, amazing filmmaker. He was like, I used to go to that show every week. So many people went to that show. Yeah. When I started doing stand-up again, because we did 3 seasons of the show on Comedy Central where we like shot it in that space, younger comedians would come up to me and be like, that was like the first stand-up show I saw on TV, and it made me want to do stand-up. So it's kind of wild, this thing we did for 6 years. I'm just very proud of it. I'm very proud that it seemed to catch with certain people. Yeah.
I'm forgetting the chronology. Was that Marin episode with you there? I wasn't in that episode.
Okay. He cast someone else to play me.
What?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, I'm misremembering.
Yeah, it wasn't me. I mean, Marin and I had some drama. I love Marin, and we're great. But I mean, comedians love drama, so we had some drama, and I think it was clearly meant to be our show. Yeah.
You joke in your new hour that you'd rather someone think you invented COVID than think you're just an actor pretending to be a stand-up, essentially, because some people, obviously know you first from film and TV. Can you talk about that and why that's actually important to you?
And I do not have an issue with this, but I see people who are like, oh, he's an actor, why is he doing stand-up? Like, people have this sort of territoriality about stand-up. I think especially comedians do. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember for Funny People, when all those guys were going around doing stand-up to like prepare for that film, a lot of the local comedians were really upset about it. Like, they'd go to the Improv and stuff, and other comedians were angry about it. I never was. I was like, whoever wants to do it should do it. If they're good, people will laugh. If they're not good, people won't laugh.
Yeah.
Like, it is what it is. So it never really bothered me that actors were like, no, I want to try this, because some of them end up actually being really good at it, Like, I just did a show. I did Hilarity for Charity, which is Seth and Lauren's charity for Alzheimer's, and Seth Rogen hosted the show. And I was like, oh, you can actually do stand-up. Like, how to do this. You could be a stand-up. But I know that there's like the stigma against, maybe it's just in the comedy community. Mostly I just wanted to, it was a way to like reintroduce myself to a stand-up comedy audience,
Yeah.
Because a lot of people didn't know me from stand-up. So I didn't want them to think it was some vanity thing, that I was actually going back to like the first thing I did when I was doing entertainment.
It's funny that there's now this whole new stigma with like creators, and it's sort of a similar thing, right? It's like
with what
kind of digital
creators. Oh
yes,
totally. It's exactly the same.
And the line there is like blurred even way further. It's
they're like, you're like a YouTube person, you're an Instagram person, you shouldn't be doing stand-up. But lots of like Caleb Huron started as that, and he's a phenomenal stand-up. I mean, there are a lot. To me, it's always like, if there are funny people, let them, whoever wants to try it should try it. It's what's great about stand-up is that there is really no barrier to entry, Even like to do Instagram videos, you need a phone. To do stand-up, you don't need anything. I think it should be welcoming. I think everybody should be able to try it into it if they want to.
How does the scene feel now, having been out there again, versus when you were starting?
I was really, my entire time in Chicago, my entire time in New York, and my entire time in LA up until my break, I was mostly in whatever's considered the alt scene, which just means stuff that's not in comedy clubs. There's no specific, I think, identity to the alt scene other than we're not in comedy clubs. Mm-hmm. The alt scene is very amorphous because there's people playing weird characters, but it's also people being a little more personal during their stand-up than most comedians. So it's like a really wide umbrella. Now, I think in LA, the alt comedy scene is not really as active anymore as it used to be. So when I started doing stand-up again, I would find out like where the alt shows are, and there aren't that many left. So that's been the biggest adjustment for me, is when I started like developing material, I went to all the comedy clubs I would do. Well, there's Largo, which is an incredible, that's my favorite stage in the city. And that's still an alt comedy stage, but I think that's kind of it. Back in my day, Largo was the big one, but we had all these little shows you could do. And so for me, it was kind of an adjustment to like do the Comedy Store every week, do the Laugh Factory every week. My goal was always to be able to do both. Like I wanted to be able to do both kind of places. But if I have like a new 7-minute long joke, I could try it at the Meltdown. I can't really try it at the Comedy Store. At least I don't feel comfortable trying it because the guy before me just did a very polished 15 minutes and he killed. If I go up and not match that, to me, it felt like sort of a defeat. So that was the biggest adjustment for me, was figuring out how to try new material doing clubs where most people are doing like very polished material.
Right. So what did the tour look like exactly? Like for this special, what was the scope of it? And
I did theaters. So I actually talked to my buddy Anthony Jeselnik about it. I was like, how do you put together a tour? What do you do? He develops a year in LA. He does clubs for a year and he does theaters for a year and then he records a special. So it's a 3-year thing.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah. I was
compared to the year cadence of a lot of people.
A lot of people is a year. Well, I think part of it is that now people are getting 3 special deals and stuff. And so now instead of like getting it done whenever it gets done, there's pressure to like put stuff out all the time. Anthony's on like a 3-year cycle, which I think really, at least for the way he writes, is like still very fast. Like it takes a while to write. But I was like, I know I don't have 3 years to do this. So I did a truncated version where I wrote material in LA for 6 months. Then I did like 4 different clubs. Because the thing about clubs is you could perform Thursday to Sunday. You could do 7 shows in the same space. And that's when I really started sharpening. But the bulk of the special was like theaters. I did theaters all over the country. The theaters that were like 1,500 or 2,000 seat theaters. You know, some cities like Washington, D.C., for instance, I could do 2 of those shows. Like there were certain markets that were just better for me for reasons I don't understand. Like D.C. has always been great for me. Chicago, obviously. But like Madison's really good. Portland's really good. For some reason, a place like Philadelphia is more challenging for me. I don't know why. Right. So like I could I could sell 3 times as many tickets in DC as I could in Philadelphia. Maybe it's geographical location.
That's very
I don't
interesting.
know. So I did probably 1,500 seaters to 2,000 seaters. I did so many cities. I think I did probably about, all told, probably like 30 to 40 cities. And I would do 2 weekends on, 1 weekend off. My sweet spot is like a theater that's like 100, 110 years old. Again, has to be a good comedy space. You know, I just like the vibe of like a theater that's like I think the Vic where I recorded my special is like 120 years old. To me, that's like the perfect thing. Like a 1,500 seat theater that's got like some history to it, some personality to it, and is still like a good comedy performance room.
I love the title of this special, Night Thoughts, which is sort of these weird and anxious thoughts you have in the middle of the night, right? So what are the new ones? Is there one you can share?
I mean, you know, some of them are not very funny. Night thoughts have started crawling their way into day thoughts. Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of really any that, you know, at the time I was like, oh, this is a thing. This is like a good container for a bunch of different stuff. So I don't really remember right offhand what else I had in there or that could go in there. Now, here's the other thing, you know, for stand-up is like, if you're not actively trying to write material, it's not going to come to you, at least for me. So since I did the special, I don't really have any new material because I was like, all right, I'm going to take a break from stand-up again to like focus on other stuff.
Yeah.
So I haven't been like coming up with jokes or looking at the world through that lens. Like for me, it is like a gear shift to go into that. There are certain people that are always like really good at catching it. I have to like adjust, and it takes a bit of effort to like be open to it. I have to like
mindfulness.
I have to be it's
sort of like a way of like looking at your like processing experience.
Yeah, and it's an active thing. It's not a passive thing. You're not like waiting for stuff to come to you. You're kind of like hunting for stuff all the time. At least I am. I don't know how other people do it. So for me, if I'm not doing stand-up, I don't have like when people are like, oh, you haven't done stand-up in a while, you must have so much material. I'm like, no, I have none. I only have stuff when I'm doing it and thinking about it.
Yeah. It seemed like this was your first big tour, like proper tour, right?
Yes.
What were some of the other cool experiences as part of that? If I'm remembering correctly, you went to the Cellar for maybe the first time on this tour. I'm not sure, but
I started doing the Cellar again as I was developing this. I never did the Cellar when I lived in New York. I started doing the Cellar when I would visit New York, and I still now I haven't done it in a couple months, but yeah, I didn't really do the Cellar until I started developing material for this tour. And they've been very nice to me. I would just text and go up as many times as I wanted to that week. So, and it was great because it was my thing. In New York, I was like, I only do the alt venues. The Cellar's like the best comedy room in the country. I should have been trying to do that. But, it's hard to get into that place. What helped me was being more established in other ways and then coming into it. So yeah, Cellar's incredible. They have like 3 performance venues in like a 2-block radius. So you could do like 3 or 4 sets in one night. What I loved was how much of my family got to see me do stand-up for the first time. So like I have a lot of family in Toronto. So when I was there, like, I had like 25 of my cousins and their kids and stuff show up and then going out to dinner afterwards. So I really loved that. I loved that friends that I hadn't talked to in a while, or a lot of family that had never seen me do stand-up came to see me do it because, like you said, it's really, I've done one tour in my entire life. Like the last special I didn't tour for it because I had like all this material sitting around. With this, I had to tour to like sharpen it,
Yeah.
And so to me, that was really fun. It was also just really fun to be able to like write on tour, because what you do is you set up a tour, whether or not, at least I do, I set up the start of the tour months before I knew I had the material to do it, because it lights a fire under you to come up with stuff. But also writing as you're performing, doing the tour is very exciting, because you're sort of figuring out like, oh, this joke doesn't work here, I'll move it here. I have this new joke, I'm going to try it here. So each show, at least in the first half of the tour, it's very fluid. It's kind of changing. You're trying different things. You're trying new punchlines. You're rewriting stuff. To me, that's the most exciting part of touring, was when I was still figuring it out.
Also, early in the special, just get it out there and about, you have to address anything physical about you or anything about you that's just going to stand out as obvious, so you get the muscles in there right away. Like,
yeah.
And I was talking to some reps the other day, and they were like crediting you with sparking some movement where comics are like getting shredded,
I'm so sorry.
Do you take any credit for that?
No, I don't want any credit for that.
You don't want to own that?
No, I don't want to own that. Yeah, no.
It's pretty interesting, because like in comedy, as I've known it my whole life, it was like, you can't, those two things,
you can't
don't
do both
together.
Right. I don't think that's true. I think you can be whatever and be funny. I really do. I think you have to have a level of self-awareness about it, which, that stuff, Emily was the one who pushed me to talk about it. She's like, you look very different on stage. So when I was starting doing stand-up again, she's like, it's going to be weird for you because you look different on stage. So your material has to change. You can't do, my first special was called Beta Male. It was about me being a nerd and being scared and stuff. And she's like, you could talk about that stuff now, but you got to address the way you look, I cut a different figure now. People's experience of me is different. I think you just have to be self-aware about it. I think that's the biggest thing in comedy. Like the big, separating thing is comics who are self-aware and comics who are not self-aware. I'm very aware of how I look different. And I knew that I had to talk about it, because I talk about it twice. I talk about it first up front just to get it out of the way. And then I talk about it later in a 15-minute long bit at the end, where I really, really get into it. I had to do it just to be like, you know what? Don't worry. I know this is the elephant in the room. I diffuse it, and then I later bring it back. I do that a bunch in the special, where I kind of bring up topics a little bit and then talk about them later. And I think that stuff comes from screenwriting, where everything that happens later in act 3 or twist or reveal, whatever, has to be seeded through. Otherwise people are jarred by it. So I think that's the lesson I learned and put into my stand-up, where even jokes that are coming up later, I kind of seed a little hint to them early on, just so that it feels like one cohesive thing rather than a collection of unconnected stories.
One of the other notable things about the special to me is it ends up being sort of a tribute to bagels, right?
Yeah.
Did you know the cat was sick when you were sort of in the early process of putting together the act? And
yeah, the cat got sick right before I started doing stand-up. I was shooting Ghostbusters in London when she first got sick. So when I started doing stand-up, the goal for me doing this special was I have to be completely authentic to myself. I have to be completely truthful. And part of that is I have to talk about everything that is big in my life right now, that is big in my head right now, which is why I talk about the muscle stuff and the therapy stuff and all that. And I was like, okay, the challenge here is obviously me having to medicate my cat that I love so much is like a big part of my life. And if I don't talk about this, I'm like sort of cheating myself, or I'm like being cowardly. So that was the one, the jokes come sort of like you notice something, you're like, I could do a joke about that. And then jokes come where you're like, I need to talk about this. How do I make it funny? And that's what that whole bagel chunk was like. The challenge was, I want to take this thing that is not funny to me at all. How do I make it funny to an audience?
You and your wife, Emily, launched a production company, Winter Coat, last year. And so you got this first look deal at Sony. Can you talk about your ambitions and sort of how things are going?
Things are going really, really well. It's really exciting. The first movie that we produced, very, very proud of that. So we started a little over a year ago, and the reality of it is suddenly you're starting from scratch and you're like pushing all these simultaneous boulders up the hill because we have a bunch of projects we're excited about. And now we're getting to the point where we're realizing like, oh, it seems like these 2 or 3 things of all the things we've been trying are getting fairly real. Okay. So yeah, it's there's a movie I'm going to direct that's looking like it's going to happen next year. That's great. Emily wrote a movie that's looking like it's going to happen that we have a great director attached to, and it's a really beautiful script she wrote. There's a TV show that is looking like pretty good. I mean, that's especially now it's so hard, but you start off with like everything's at like 0%, you push it up. Something's at 40%, 50%, and now I feel like we have like 3 things that are like 80 to 90%. Who knows? But I feel fairly confident. It's been really good. Our exec, Dan Emilia, has been really, it's been great to work with her because we share the same taste and we share the same passion for movies and TV, because we talk to a lot of execs. You'd be shocked at how many people don't like movies and TVs. They're not like excited about it. For us, like, to me, it's the most important thing in the world. It really is. I've been like in love with movies my entire life. So to work with someone who's just as passionate and excited about them.
Danny was just someone you met through interviews or through...
Interviews, yeah.
Okay.
We just interviewed a bunch of people, our reps at UTA and Mosaic were like, here are all the people who are really good. So we met a bunch of people, and it was just immediately, we were like, it's her. It's got to be her. So it's been absolutely wonderful. We're developing a bunch of stuff, but you read the description of what we want to do, and that is, it's basically like the Big Sick to me is like a good like example of that, because it feels like a lot of words in a row. But it's really like we want to make stuff that's fun to watch, that also has a reason to exist, that is saying something, but it's not like a medicine movie. Like The Big Sick on paper, like a guy falls in love with a woman in a coma, sounds like it could be a very intense, serious movie. It's a comedy. We wanted to make it fun to watch.
Execution dependent.
Yeah. And so all our stuff is like that. Like we hope it has something important to say, but we just want people to have fun watching it. Like we want them to, by fun, I don't mean they're just laughing the whole time. I want it to be moving and want it to be like a good experience watching it. So that's the kind of stuff we're working on.
And you've wanted to direct for a long time?
I've wanted to direct sort of, it was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago is when I first started kind of thinking about it. I've always been so interested in every aspect of filmmaking. When I'm on a set, I don't really go to my trailer. I'm kind of hanging out with the DP and whatever, just because it would bring my energy down to go like sit and talk to no one. So I'm like pretty social on a set because it keeps me sort of going, because I know if I stop, I'm going to crash. And so I've sort of been picking little stuff up here and there, and it was like this vague thing I wanted to do. And it wasn't until I read this script that came to me to act in that I was like, okay, I feel like, I don't know if I know how to direct, but I think I know how to direct this movie.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it happened. I just read the right thing that I was like, okay, because learning to direct feels vague, but now I have a very specific project and I understood like, this is the one I'm going to like gear everything towards.
Yeah, so I was surprised to like learn a little bit about, I didn't know you're like a big genre person. So Howl, is that the one you're like looking to do first?
Yeah. Is that news out? It's not out. Who told you?
I'm a reporter. That's what I do.
Uh,
I don't want to say, I won't say too much about it, but it is like a genre thing, right?
Yeah, the first thing I want to do is like a genre thing. Emily and I are huge genre fans. We watch every sci-fi movie. We watch every horror movie. And it wasn't like I was specifically looking to direct a horror movie or anything. It was just this movie. I was like, I understand. I get this movie. It's got a very specific tone. And I was like, I see this tone. I see this tone in my head. I know exactly how this should be. Obviously, you learn and you adjust as things go, but I just was like, I think I know how to do this one. Obviously, there's been, a lot of comedians pivoting into making horror movies recently, and it's been like successful. Like obviously Jordan Peele, Josh Rubin, Zach Greger, all these people come from comedy and have made like great horror. So I think that their track record has helped me a little bit in making this pivot, whatever it is. It's one of those things where you don't realize, and I have so much to learn, but you don't realize how much you already know just because you've been watching movies your whole life. And I learned that as I was sitting in the edit bay, which is my favorite part of the process, sitting in the edit bay, and you go, that doesn't feel right. I don't know why, but that doesn't feel right. And then you work on it and then you're like, that feels right. And it just comes from, there are like rules of filmmaking that I think you internalize just from watching movies over and over and over. So when you watch a movie where the editing's off, you can kind of pick up on it, right? Or when a performance is off, you can like pick up on it. And I think some of it was getting the confidence to do it came from, or getting the confidence to wanting to do it came from just being in the edit bay and being like, I don't give myself enough credit for how much I do know what a movie should feel like.
Yeah. So you see yourself as someone who's going to vacillate between something like The Big Sick and something that's a little bit different tonally.
Well, I want to say that whatever we make, you'll feel that it's from the people who made The Big Sick. Like even if it's a horror or a sci-fi, it won't be like shocking because we do have a certain voice, but also like certain things we vacillate towards, like a certain kind of emotionality or a certain kind of tone juggling or balancing that is very exciting to us. It's harder to execute. It's also harder to convince people to let you do it. Like, we're in a time where people really want things to be in specific boxes.
Right.
Because I think the industry's in a sort of a challenging spot. So
yeah.
People are like a little bit scared of things that they don't exactly see. I think of it all as one thing. I'm not thinking like, all right, I'm trying something different from The Big Sick. To me, it feels like the same. I'm sort of doing the same kind of thing with more responsibilities. Directing obviously is so much more than writing and acting and something and producing it.
I believe you're a big video game fan, and you've got the next season of Fallout. You have a role in the next season of Fallout, which is coming out very soon. Was that super exciting for you, or did you play the games? Or
Yeah, I love the games. We're huge fans. I'm a huge fan. Emily and I play video games all the time. Right, we're playing a video game right now. I'm always playing video games. I've played them my entire life. It's always been like movies and video games have been my passions. I actually acted in a few video games, and I realized I was like, oh, this is not for me. Although I did do another one that's going to come out in a couple years now, a Naughty Dog one that's going to be really, really good.
Okay.
Huge fan of the game. I watched the show and I was like, they really so they'd offered me a part in season 1 of Fallout, and I just couldn't do it because of schedule. But I was like, this is really good. And I mean, one of the creators of the show, Graham Wagner, is a guy who was a writer on Silicon Valley. Before that, he was a writer on Portlandia. So I've known this guy a long time. Then I watched the show and I was like, they really nailed the tone, because there's like a weird, like, anti-corporate comedy angle to that video game, and the show really, really nailed it. So it's like this big budget post-apocalyptic show with big set pieces, but it's also got this really wry sense of humor. So I watched the first season and I was like, oh man, it would have been nice to be in that. And honestly, what happened, I just texted Graham and I was like, I love this show. If there's ever anything, that's the thing I've learned. Emily was like, just ask people. So I've just started asking people. I've been like, hey, I'm a fan of yours. I'd love to work with you anytime, which is so, it felt shameless to me, but I'm like, no, I'm just going to do it. There's no point. So I just texted him and I was like, if there's ever anything, let me know. And then a few months later, he was like, hey, so there's this thing. And then he called me, and I remember I was in our Winter Court offices, and he pitched me the character, and I was like, that sounds great. Send me the script. I read it, and I was like, this is so fun. I love the show. I would have done anything on it, but to do like a fun part like that was really, really exciting. So that's how that happened. I just asked him.
Super cool. I'm curious, like, because you're so busy in film and TV, we reported on a new project of yours, Compulsive Liar, just like a couple of weeks ago. There's so much stuff going on. How do you see stand-up factoring into the mix now for you? Do you have a sense of like when you would want to try this again, like, or do another tour or anything? Or like, how are you going to play it when you've got so many other things you're responsible for?
It's looking like right now, I won't be able to do it very much the next year. A couple months ago, I was like, oh, I have a little window here where I could do it. And it was when I finished Oh Mary, which was this play I did on Broadway, ended end of September.
How long were you in that?
8 weeks.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was really fun. I'd never done a play. And then
what was your role?
I was the husband.
Okay.
Have you seen the show?
No, I hear great things.
Yeah. So, Abraham Lincoln. It was really, really phenomenal. It was so fun. When I got back, I was like, okay, now I can sort of through the end of the year focus on stand-up. It just kind of didn't work out that way because it turns out like, if you're like out of pocket for 3 months, when you come back, there's a lot of stuff to take care of. And so then it was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago where I was like, okay, now I think I can go back to stand-up. But looking at it now, I don't think I'll be able to do it for next year. I think for stand-up, it's just going to have to be like whenever I feel the urge or have the time or whatever, because the thing is, if I'm shooting, I'm feeling creatively satisfied. I don't feel the urge to go perform at night. I'm feeling happy just acting or just writing, so because to me, it all comes from the same like pool. That energy comes from the same pool. So it's not like I have a different pool for writing and a different pool for acting, a different pool for stand-up. So right now, it's looking like I don't think I'll be doing stand-up for a little bit. But, we'll see.
Anything you want to plug? I mean, I don't think we talked about Ella McKay. That's also coming
out. Yeah, Ella McKay is out on December 12th. That's James L. Brooks. It's got a phenomenal cast. Emma Mackey, Jamie Lee Curtis, Woody Harrelson, Albert Brooks, Io. I mean, really incredible cast. Fallout comes out, I think, December 17th. And then Night Thoughts, December 19th. And hopefully some of these other things that, we're working on end up happening. And then you'll see those.
Very good. Enjoyed your special very much. Really nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.